You're listening to the Relationships Uncomplicated podcast. Relationship advice so valuable, you won't believe it's free. And now your host, relationship expert, Idit Sharoni.
Welcome back to another episode of the Relationships Uncomplicated podcast, episode 84. I'm your host, Idit Sharoni, and today we're getting real about something I see way too often. Couples who survive the initial shock of infidelity, but then hit the pause button on the healing. They think, we're stable now, time will do the rest. Let me tell you, that approach almost always backfires. Here's the deal. When a couple gets through the initial storm of betrayal, the late-night, tearful conversations, the anger, the heartbreak, and then they finally start feeling stable again, it can be very tempting to just stop there. You survived the worst part, right? You're functioning again. Life feels more normal, so why stir the pot? But here's the thing. Stability isn't the same as healing. And when couples skip the deeper work, they're leaving their relationship on shaky ground. I've seen this happen so many times in my work. Couples who thought time would heal the pain eventually found themselves dealing with the same issues all over again. Sometimes it would be a recurring infidelity, sometimes just a lingering resentment, and sometimes just that nagging feeling that something is not quite right. Now, I get it. After the crisis stage, it's very tempting to just leave it all behind and try to move forward. I think most of us would probably attempt to do so. But here's the deal. When you skip the healing process, the actual active healing process, you're basically leaving a ticking bomb in your relationship. Now, it might not go off tomorrow or the next week, but down the road, that unresolved pain, resentment, and lack of trust will come knocking. So today, I'm here to help you understand why postponing healing is a risk you cannot afford to take. And we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about why couples fall into what I call the stabilization trap. Then we're going to talk about the hidden costs of avoiding the healing process. And most importantly, we'll talk about how to get back on track if this sounds like you. So by the end of this episode, I want you to have a clear path forward, plus some actionable tips as always to start moving the needle on healing. Sounds good? Let's do it. But before we dive into our topic, I'd like to present this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by my Infidelity Recovery and Healing Program, It's Okay to Stay. If you're struggling in the aftermath of infidelity but want to stay together, you can rebuild trust and heal through genuine expert help from me and my team personally. I started It's Okay to Stay after seeing couples therapy and self-help options often lacked essential components to help couples save their relationship after infidelity. It's Okay to Stay is a complete 8-week coaching program that involves an online roadmap course and one-on-one work with an affair recovery specialist. So if you have faith in your relationship and you want to stay together and heal, let's talk. I'm offering a 45-minute free consultation for couples who want to save their relationship and need expert help. If that's you, just go online to iditsharoni.com/45 and pick a time for a video call that both you and your partner can commit to. I'll hop on. We're first going to start with understanding your struggle, and then we're going to walk through It's Okay to Stay to see if the program is right for you. Look, so many couples try therapy and self-help methods only to be put at odds with each other. But that doesn't have to be you. With expert help, it's okay to stay. We'll give you the clarity that you need to understand each other, to heal, and to find a path forward past infidelity. So again, all you have to do to book your free consultation is to go to iditsharoni.com/45. That's iditsharoni.com/45. I'll be honored to stand alongside with you on this journey. All right, let's start with this idea of the stabilization trap. You want to know, what is it, right? Well, it's that place couples find themselves in after the initial crisis of infidelity. You've had the tough conversations, you've made the decision to stay together, and you started getting back to normal. Life feels manageable again. So some couples, and maybe some of you, have been in that place where, the first few, usually couple of weeks, 2, 3 first weeks are really, really horrific, with feelings that are just all over the place. It feels like you're on a roller coaster. And then at some point, it'll quiet down again. Not always, but sometimes it will. And you'll start feeling like, okay, I can manage life. I think I'm better. But here's the problem. This normal is more like a Band-Aid than a cure. It might feel okay for a while, but underneath, those deeper wounds are still there. Let me share a quick story about a couple I worked with. I'm going to call them Sarah and David. After David's affair came to light, they decided to stay together. They had the tough conversations, and then Sarah decided to forgive him. And a few months later, things seemed kind of fine. They weren't arguing as much, and they felt like they've moved past it. But Sarah kept having these moments where something small, like a late meeting or a text left unanswered, would trigger her. And all the anger and hurt would come flooding back. David, meanwhile, felt like he couldn't win. He thought, why can't we just move on? This is what the stabilization trap looks like. On the surface, everything seems fine, but underneath, the unresolved pain and lack of trust are still there. This is a metaphor I use all the time. Imagine you broke your arm. The doctor says you need a cast for 6 weeks. But after 2-3 weeks, the pain goes away. So you take it off. Sure, it feels fine now, but without fully healing, that bone is weak. And over time, it's more likely to break again. The same goes for relationships. When couples stop the healing process too soon, they leave the relationship vulnerable to future pain. You may not always be able to recognize it or to notice when you're leaving the healing process too soon. So let's talk about why this happens, because it's not about laziness or lack of love. It's about fear, exhaustion, and myths we all tell ourselves. First, there's the fear of reopening old wounds. Couples think, we've made it through the worst. Why would we go back there? By avoiding pain doesn't make it go away. It just buries it deeper. So if you're thinking by doing something that is more actively working towards healing the relationship, we're just going to open up an old wound, you're not going to open that old wound. Well, maybe for a little bit, but you're actually going to do the work to heal that wound. And I'll talk about it a little later. The second thing I wanted to mention is the exhaustion, right? The crisis stage is emotionally draining. People often tell me that they feel like they're on a roller coaster where they feel like they're strapped to that seat and there's no control over whenever they're going up, whenever they're going down. And it takes a lot of emotional strength and energy, right, to go through this. So by the time you get to a stable place, it feels like you've run a marathon. And by the time you get there, you don't want to go on this again. It's just like when you go off a real roller coaster, you want to stay on the ground for a little bit, right? And then finally, there's this idea that time heals all wounds. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Time might take the edge off, but healing takes intentional effort. I talk about this many times, and you probably heard me say it before in one or probably more than one of my podcast episodes. And if you're my client, then you heard me say it a lot of times. Time doesn't heal time by itself. It's what you do in that time. So if you're listening right now and thinking, okay, that sounds a little like us, don't worry, you're not alone. This trap is common, and the good news is that you can climb out of it. But first, we need to talk about what happens if you don't. So let's pause for a moment. I want you to take a minute or two to answer some questions so that you can identify your specific situation. Think about your own relationship. Are you really healing, or are you just avoiding the hard stuff? I want you to ask yourself these questions. Do we talk about the affair or the infidelity openly and constructively, or do we avoid it? Do I feel safe and secure in this relationship? Have we rebuilt trust, or are we just coasting? If your answer is not sure or not really, stay with me. Now let's get into the real costs of avoiding the healing process. And listen, I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to empower you. But we've got to be honest about what happens when these wounds are left unhealed. So there are 4 costs that I can think of. First one is unresolved pain. So just because you're not talking about the pain doesn't mean it's gone. The pain is still there. It's bubbling under the surface. It might show up in small ways like a snippy tone, a quiet resentment, or a sense of unease you can't quite put your finger on. The second cost, which is very much connected to the first one, is resentment. When one partner feels like their pain wasn't fully acknowledged, resentment builds. And let me tell you, resentment is like rust. It doesn't destroy the relationship overnight, but over time, it eats away at the foundation. We have that amazing capability of accumulating resentment inside. So it builds up and builds up and builds up until we can no longer contain it, and it will explode and come out. Now, the third cost is lack of trust. So without doing the work to rebuild trust, it's like trying to build a house on shaky ground. You might look okay from the outside, but every little storm is going to shake that whole structure. And the fourth one, which is a big one, the one that breaks my heart. Avoiding healing increases the risk of recurring infidelity. When the root cause of the affair, when those causes aren't addressed, the same vulnerabilities are still there. It's like leaving the door unlocked and hoping no one walks in. I'll tell you about another couple I worked with. Let's call them Maria and Jake. They decided to stay together after Jake's infidelity, but didn't do any real work on rebuilding trust. A year later, Maria still didn't feel she could trust Jake. She felt bitter about what happened, but she didn't know how to express it. So it came out in this passive-aggressive tone in comments. Jake, on the other hand, felt constantly criticized and started pulling away. Their relationship on the surface was functional, but it wasn't thriving. They kept going like that for a couple of years until Jake had another affair. That second revelation is what brought them to me, and then we worked on healing from both affairs. This is to say that without proper healing, the relationship remains vulnerable. Okay, let's flip the scripts and talk about what healing actually looks like. We'll do that right after this message.
This episode is sponsored by my Infidelity Recovery and Healing program, It's Okay to Stay. If you're struggling in the aftermath of infidelity but want to stay together, you can rebuild trust and heal through genuine expert help from me and my team personally. I started It's Okay to Stay after seeing couples therapy and self-help options often lacked essential components to help couples save their relationship after infidelity. It's Okay to Stay is a complete 8-week coaching program that involves an online roadmap course and one-on-one work with an affair recovery specialist. So if you have faith in your relationship and you want to stay together and heal, let's talk. I'm offering a 45-minute free consultation for couples who want to save their relationship and need expert help. If that's you, just go online to iditsharoni.com/45 and pick a time for a video call that both you and your partner can commit to. I'll hop on. We're first going to start with understanding your struggle, and then we're going to walk through It's Okay to Stay to see if the program is right for you. Look, so many couples try therapy and self-help methods only to be put at odds with each other. But that doesn't have to be you. With expert help, It's Okay to Stay will give you the clarity that you need to understand each other, to heal, and to find a path forward past infidelity. So again, all you have to do to book your free consultation is to go to iditsharoni.com/45. That's iditsharoni.com/45. I'll be honored to stand alongside with you on this journey.
Okay, we are back. Enough with the doom and gloom. Let's talk about what healing actually looks like. First, let me say this. Healing isn't about going back to the way things were. It's about building something new, something better. So how do you do that? Let me walk you through the essentials. First, you want to rebuild trust, right? Trust is not rebuilt with promises. It's rebuilt with actions. This could mean creating a transparency plan or checking in regularly or being accountable in ways that make your partner feel safe. It's acting in trustworthy ways. Inside our Infidelity Recovery program, we work with our couples in various ways. Some of them are how to close the infidelity chapter properly, creating a transparency plan, expressing remorse, acting in trustworthy ways, and so on and so forth. By the way, if you're interested in learning more about rebuilding trust, you can listen to episode 80, where I discuss that very topic with our clinical director, Dr. Yael Haklein-Yego, and there we share some actionable items on how to restore trust after infidelity. Okay. Here's another essential: having hard conversations. Avoiding tough topics might keep the peace in the short term, but in the long run, it just creates distance. It's so important to have open, honest, and productive conversations about what happened and how to move forward. The next one is processing emotions. The hurt partner needs space to grieve and express their anger, sadness, or fear without judgment. This is tough, but it's necessary. Our program believes that this is such an essential part of the healing that we actually work with our couples specifically on how to hear and express the pain. We help our couples have a compassionate and transformative conversations around the pain. So this is very, very important. Next, creating a shared vision. This is where you sit down and say, what kind of a relationship do we want moving forward? It's not just about recreating the past. It's about building something stronger together. Our message to our couples in the program is that they get a chance to rewrite their relationship's story, or to rewrite their relationship's future story. And we give them the tools and walk them through this life-changing experience. And I say life-changing because quite a few of our couples decide to not only write this new chapter, but to actually conduct some kind of a ceremony around it, which is not only beautiful, but super meaningful for those couples who've come out on the other side of infidelity. Next, getting help. Let's be real. Healing is hard to do on your own. This is where a therapist or a coach can be a game changer. Someone who's been through this process with other couples and can guide you step by step. That's such an amazing help that you can get for yourself. If you're not an expert on healing relationships after infidelity, and even if you are, and I've worked with some experts as well who wanted some guidance for their own personal lives in the aftermath of infidelity, they felt that they needed someone else's guidance. But if you're not an expert, consider allowing someone, a trusted expert or a therapist, to guide you. We've recorded a whole episode, by the way, about the difference between couples therapy, the more conventional couples therapy, and an infidelity recovery program. It's episode 78, and it's filled with essential information about the right treatment after infidelity and the various options that are out there. Okay, so I want to take a second to address some of the fears that might be popping up for you right now. You might be asking yourself, what if revisiting this pain makes things worse? And I get it. It's scary, but here's the truth. Avoiding the pain doesn't make it go away. I've said it earlier, right? It just buries it deeper. Revisiting it isn't about relieving it. It's about processing it so you can finally let it go. Reliving a traumatic event is scary and not necessarily helpful unless you work with a trauma specialist who can help you file it safely. What I'm talking about is systematically and gradually working through the process of healing, not necessarily through retelling or reliving the trauma. Now, you might also wonder, what if this doesn't work? Now, healing is not a straight line, and this is not always easy, but the process works if you work it. I tell my couples that after the initial roller coaster, the healing process is like a bumpy road, and they need to buckle up. And let me tell you, the couples who buckle up and commit always tell me it was worth it. So here's the bottom line. Healing after infidelity is a choice. It's a hard choice, yes, but it's the choice that transforms your relationship from something broken into something stronger. I hope you find this episode helpful and the tips helpful. And if you're ready to take the next step and you'd like some help, look into our program, It's Okay to Stay. And if it looks interesting enough for you, book a call with us. We would love to talk to you, hear your story, learn more about your specific situation, and see if our program is something that can help you. And if this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to rate us and rate the show. And I just want to thank you for spending this time with me today. And until next time, take care of yourself and your relationship. You've got this. Bye.